Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another chalk paint tutorial. My name is Megan and today I'm going to show you guys how to chalk paint and distress a piece of furniture. I have a few chalk paint videos on my channel, but none of them include any distressing. I'm not normally a fan of distressing furniture. I don't always like the way it looks. It's just got to be that right piece for me. And when I came across this really beautiful French Provincial desk slash vanity on Facebook Marketplace earlier this summer, I bought it right away. There were so many people trying to come and get this according to the seller, and luckily I got my hands on it. It was only $45. Let me show you what it looked like before, because it was just really ugly in my opinion. It was that orangey sort of glossy wood that I just do not like, but it had beautiful bones. The structure of it is just exactly what I was looking for. I don't like black furniture. Well, lo and behold, here I am. I'm painting a piece of furniture black. I love it, but you can paint, you can take this tutorial and use it however you want. Paint your furniture whatever color you want, and you can still use these same techniques. Now, I did distress this, but I lightly distressed it. I don't like I said, I don't like a ton of distressing. It's got to be the right piece, but I wanted some of that wood to show through on this. And real quickly, I just want to mention this book by Annie Sloan. It's called Quick and Easy Paint Transformations. Annie Sloan has actually published quite a few books and workbooks for chalk painting. I've looked through all of them, and I think there's maybe one other that I was interested in, but I purchased this one because I felt like it was the most helpful, and I go back to it all of the time because there are a lot of techniques in here that you can use, things that I just kind of forget about. Sometimes you need a little inspiration. So if you're looking for a book about chalk paint, this is going to be what I would recommend. I think this has been the most helpful out of any that I own. Let's get started on this project, and real quickly before I do, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. I do DIY, lifestyle, home, mom videos. I have a son, he's 7 months old, so I do make some videos featuring him and talking about being a mom. But if you like any of that, please make sure you stick around. Please make sure you subscribe. And lastly, please leave me a comment in the comment box below. I want to know what color you would have painted this dresser. If you didn't paint it the color that I painted it, what color would you have painted it? So even though chalk paint has a reputation for not needing a lot of prep work, I still had to do a lot to this before I could start painting. There was a spot on the underside where the veneer had been damaged, so I needed to fix that. And if you look underneath, there was some pretty nasty stuff going on underneath here, so that needed to be cleaned out as well. I love the hardware on this. I definitely want to save the hardware. I just need to clean it up. First, before I do any repairing, I need to make sure I remove all of the hardware and that I clean the entire thing from head to toe. You guys have been awesome and have left me so many comments and tips on things, on different projects, and one of them was to use white vinegar on my furniture before I chalk painted it. So I wanted to try that today. I felt like the vinegar wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to do, so I broke out some simple green, and let me tell you guys, the dirt really started to come off. For all of these really crusty areas inside here that are really hard to get, I just used some sandpaper on a sanding block and tried to do the best I could. When it came to repairing this missing veneer here, everything that I've read online says you should use this product called Bondo, which fixes like fiberglass and wood, and I just felt like it wasn't something that I wanted to get into with this project. I have some simple wood putty that I wanted to use on this and just to see how it did. As this was on the underside and it wasn't on the top, I felt like it was worth taking the risk just to see what the results would be. Since I put this on pretty thick, I let it dry for a few hours, and once it was dry, I sanded it down with my sanding block. And since the top of this was pretty beat up, I wanted to make sure it was really nice and even. So I pulled out my palm sander and got to work. And then one last thing before I start painting, I need to make sure that this is completely dust free after sanding it. So I just wiped it down with a rag and just removed all of that dust. The chalk paint that I'm using is by Annie Sloan, and the color is called Athenian Black. This is actually a new color from them, and it is much deeper and it has a little bit more of a violent tint than Annie Sloan's Graphite, which is a little bit more of a charcoal. Now, I like my chalk paint to be a little thinner than the way it comes, so I always add a little bit of water to the can right when I open it, and I mix it up, and I just start applying. If you have any questions about chalk paint, I do have a video all about chalk paint, just answering common questions, and I will link that below for you. You'll notice that I do start painting my furniture from the bottom. I like to do that because I want to be able to stand it up and finish the top. I don't want to have to go back and paint the bottom and lay the top on the ground. So that is why I do that. Another thing is I am using Annie Sloan's chalk paint brush to do this project, and it's only because I'm being a little lazy. I have another paint project going on and I don't want to rinse the other brush. I don't prefer this brush to chalk paint with. It's a little heavy and it actually hurts my hand, and I even got a blister while doing this project. So you don't need to spend the money on an Annie Sloan chalk paint brush if you're using Annie Sloan chalk paint, and I talk a little bit more about that in my chalk paint questions video that I will link below. Not worried about brush strokes. I'm really just slapping this on, trying to get it covered, making sure I don't have any drip marks, things like that. And you know, if you're worried about brush strokes, I hate to say it, but I don't think chalk paint is your medium. I think that maybe you might be going for a different look, and a different product would work a little easier for you. I want you to see what this looks like after one coat. It's not perfect. We can still see the wood underneath. We're going to have to do 2 coats to get that full coverage look. Common mistake that I've seen people make when using chalk paint is that they try to get that first coat perfect. They try to get full coverage, then it ends up looking thick and messy, and it's just not the best way to use this paint. So once I've got my second coat on and I've let it dry, and by the way, this stuff dries really fast. You'll see it drying as you're painting, so you could really move through this pretty quickly. I'm gonna grab some dark wax from Annie Sloan. Now, this is not the black wax, this is the dark wax. Although on this color of Annie Sloan chalk paint, they do look very similar. I went to a local Annie Sloan retailer and I looked at the difference on Athenian Black, and there wasn't much, but I already owned this dark wax, and so that is what I went for. I'm using that same brush, and this is actually what I do like to use for waxing. So I'm just applying it with the brush, and then as soon as I finish a small section, I take some of these blue shop wipes and I just wipe off the excess. So I will link these below. I think they're great. Some of you may be wondering, when am I going to distress this? It said that in the title that this piece was going to be painted and distressed. And I want you to know that I like to wax before I distress. It helps to protect the piece from being overly distressed. I don't like to overly distress most pieces that I acquire. So I think it just takes the right piece. But anyway, I will be doing that as soon as I finish getting this first coat of wax on. I just want you guys to see the difference between the portions that are waxed and the portions that are unwaxed. You can see the bottom is much lighter now that it's dry than the portion on top that has been waxed. It's much deeper. Now I'm gonna start distressing. I just let this sit for a couple hours in between because I really wanted to make sure that wax was cured, and even so it still comes off on your sandpaper. I'm just using 150 grit for my sandpaper, and you could use any grit you want. It's going to take off more if you use a lower grit number, and it's going to take off less if you use a higher grit number. 150 seemed to be right in the middle, and it was perfect. I just went around all of the edges. I picked places where naturally, you know, the furniture would be bumped or hit if it was being moved around. And I just wanted this to look very subtle, very natural, and just have some of that wood show through. So one thing I did that was a little extra was I just sanded the very top of this dresser. I really want to make sure the top is very nice and smooth. So I just took my sanding block and I just went over it and I just smoothed that first layer of wax. I didn't remove all of it. I just wanted to make it really nice and smooth, and it actually makes that second layer of wax go on much, much better. And this is the final step, and I'm applying a second layer of wax, and this time I'm using a rag to do it. So I'm just going and dipping into my wax can with my rag, and I'm wiping it on, and then I'm using another rag to wipe it off. And I just think this is much, much cleaner than applying the second layer with the brush. The first layer with the brush really works that wax into the paint and into the paint strokes and all of the texture of your piece. And then once you have that on, you can use the rag to do your second coat, and it just goes on a little smoother. I love the hardware so much on this piece that I wanted to keep it. I don't want to replace it, but I needed to clean it. So I used some Brasso and I just rubbed these really clean with a rag. Thank you guys for watching this tutorial. I just want to let you know that most of the projects that I do, I tend to post on my Instagram, on my Instagram stories. If you want to stay ahead of what I'm doing, please make sure you give me a follow. I am at Belle and Cotton. I'm always sharing tips, and I'm also asking you guys your opinions on some of the projects that I'm doing as I'm doing them, and I love hearing feedback from you guys. Well, that is all I have for today, and thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on my next project.